What's up, everybody? Jill here. How's it going? It has been raining all week. I think we have a break in the weather on Friday, so I haven't been able to do a whole lot outside. However, I just pulled up the Weather Channel app and I saw that we've got like mist this morning, but we've got like a really small percent later in the night, like 10 o'clock to midnight. And so I really need to get some things planted outside. Typically, I kind of like to use the weather to my advantage. So if I know that we're gonna have some light rain, I'll try to go out and do a planting. That way I don't have to water it in. However, if we're having like really intense rain, I'm gonna avoid that, especially with something like a bean. It's either gonna get pushed down into the soil too deep, or a lot of times it washes away. You especially don't wanna do this if you're sowing something like carrots or lettuce, you know, those really small seeds. But we had most of the heavy rainfall earlier in the week. You know, tomorrow we're not supposed to have any, and so it's definitely lightening up, and so we're gonna try it. Today I'm growing the garbanzo, also known as chickpeas. We'll head down into the garden. I'll tell you why I'm growing these. It's my first year, what we plan on doing with them. So the garden is an absolute muddy mess. So I had to put my rain boots on. No farming and earth runners today. But with the rain has come a rush of cooler temperatures. So it's 67 degrees right now. It hasn't actually, this is the warmest day it's been. It's been low 60s the past few days. Our rose plant though, like the rose going into the arbor, into the garden, is out of this world. Check that out. My goodness. There are so many roses. So these are the David Austin. For those of you who may be new, the Tangerine Sky. They're just stunning. Hello, garden. Oh my gosh, look at this. It fell. We did have some crazy storms. I don't know if it broke off or what. I'll have to see. Our green stalk's looking good too. Look at all the tomatoes on here. I've got beans, more beans, tomatoes, zinnias, spinach. This is a pepper plant. I've got a melon plant down there. The spinach looks great. Yeah, look at this. This is awesome. A little cute zinnia. So I have a coupon code. I'll put it in here. Use code WWFARM. You'll get $10 off your green stock order. Here we've got Charlie's little arrangement. So zinnias are starting to bloom. Then we move over here to our celosia and our basil. So that's looking pretty good too. And then we had our dahlias planted over here. We're actually going to plant our beans back over here. So I still have quite a few things to plant out. I have to plant the rest of our okra down here. Over here we have a bunch of things we've started in mini blocks. So beets, things like that. That will go in there. I planted a bunch of beans on this trellis, which they all look like they're coming up nicely. And then back here we have our huge sections behind where we put up the tomatoes for things, which is actually where I'm going to be planting the beans today. So all of our pole beans popped up fine. This is just a stringless. I want to say it's called like Blue Lake is the variety. And then down here I planted these a couple weeks ago. This is the Queen's Lime Red Edition. They're very stunning, as you can see. And then down here is a new variety I grew from Johnny's called Oklahoma Salmon. And it is also really stunning, so look at that. And we've got our beets and our carrots, more roses. I'm not sure what these varieties are, but they are stunning. More roses, more zinnias. So I'm actually going to cultivate this bed real quick because this is where we're going to be planting today, and then we'll get started. Alright, so I am using the Stirrup hoe from Haas Tools. I actually really like this tool. You guys saw me use it. What it does is it goes in and it cuts the root system, which makes cultivation super easy. This is actually one of the only long handle tools that I'm using here on the farm. So it is one of the only long handle tools that I'm using on the farm. I love it. I'll put the link down in the description below. One thing I will say, if you buy any sort of wooden handle tools, which I like the aesthetic of that, but you need to make sure that you're keeping it out of the elements, right? It doesn't need to get rained on because that wood will rot. So having a designated place that you keep your tools is super helpful. And another thing too, something I've been getting asked a lot is, what do I plan on doing for mulch? I've talked about not liking straw. I've done pine shavings in the past. And that worked some, but then eventually it added too much. Like it wouldn't break down very well. I had huge clumps at the end of the season, depending on how the weather was that year. So this year I've decided not to do a mulching option. I really do believe that if you cultivate regularly, you don't need to mulch. And so every single Wednesday is Weeding Wednesday here on the farm. I get up early in the morning and I cultivate all of the beds. This has worked really nicely. And usually the weeds aren't, you know, super large and established with just in a week's time. Granted, we've had so much rain that I'm noticing a bit more weeds this week than I have in the weeks in the past. But I do think if you can set yourself up on a good schedule, one, that's just a really good reminder to constantly be cultivating your beds, constantly like eliminating the grass that might be sprouting. And really it saves you less money. You can buy one good tool versus having to buy mulch consistently. And then like at the end of the season, are you taking that mulch and throwing it into your compost? There's just a lot of different steps involved. And for me, it kind of eliminates those extra steps and I just don't have to worry about them. So that's my little take on mulching. And it's worked pretty decent. All right, so I've got the garbanzo bean from M.I. Gardner, also known as a chickpea. So this is going to be my first year growing these. I briefly looked at them. You can grow them this time of year. It says it's 60 to 100 days until maturity. And then it tells you to obviously direct seed after the last frost, much like any other bean. But the reason we're growing this is for hummus. We are eating hummus, buying hummus every single week. And when I say like buying some, we're buying like 5 or 6 containers. That's just a snack that everyone eats. We'll dip our carrots in it, all sorts of different fermented things. The kids are eating it. We put it on like our breakfast sandwiches, things like that. So hummus is one of those things we're growing through often. We have access to great oil, so we buy all of our olive oil locally from Squisitos, and so there's so many different wide ranges of flavor options there that Nathan was like, why are we not making our own hummus? Like, what is the deal there? I have all these, you know, chickpeas I've bought from Azure Standard, but I thought if I could grow this, that's just one less thing I have to buy. And so this is my first year growing this. This is only a pack of 25, so I am going to kind of test it this year. If it does well, then obviously I'll be growing a much larger space of this, you know, going into the years to come. But it does say you can grow them for sprouts and eat them. And it says for harvesting that if you want to eat the beans fresh, harvest when they are still small and green like a snap bean. You can also dry the bean, wait for it to turn brown, and pull the whole plant, which I'm pretty sure that is how I am going to have to do this. So I don't know if you guys can see the package here, but they're green like this, so we'll probably let them dry and then use them. So let's get started. And it says seed spacing is about 5 to 6 inches. So I'm just gonna do probably a couple rows. And then I wanted to talk to you guys about something today. All right, nobody come at me for standing in my garden beds. I know this is like a raised bed, no, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Plus it's like literally ankle deep water over here. But I did want to talk to you guys about something today while I'm planting. Again, we get a lot of messages, we get a lot of emails, and honestly, I love it, right? Because it gives us the opportunity to one, know a different way to do things, think about how to cater to you guys well, like what you want, and then just have conversations that you guys are interested in us having. And the one thing I get asked almost weekly is, why did you quit your job and farm? Like what possessed you to do that? Why did you decide to do that? I actually had like a decent paying job. So a lot of people are like, why would you quit your job where you were financially okay and take the risk to farm, when a lot of people recognize small scale growers as not profitable, right? Like you have to grow on a super large scale to make any money at it. And so I just want to talk about that today. So for starters, I quit my job because I was extremely dissatisfied with what I was doing, right? I think that's a common thing, is when you talk to a lot of people and you ask them like, oh, well, do you like your job? Most of them would say no. And for me, that's mind-boggling. Why would I spend all of my time and energy and resources at a place where I wasn't happy, where I didn't see a future? And so for me, that was a large part of where it started. You know, I've been growing my own food for 10 years now. I grew up with it, worked on my papa's, garden as a kid, and worked on a cattle farm into high school and college, and so I was familiar with agriculture. This wasn't a foreign world to me. I grew up, my parents had a garden, some on and off, but like I would go to my papa's and he'd be making jelly, and I'd go to my other papa's and he's canning tomatoes, right? So like I grew up knowing that like this was a way people lived. But I think a lot, like many people in our society, you become super disconnected from actually how your food is grown. And once I became an adult, I was probably, like 19, 20, I really just started making a shift of like, man, what I'm doing is not working. How I was taught to do things isn't how I'm comfortable doing things. I started thinking about getting married and having children one day, and like, how do I want to raise my children? How do I want to teach my children? And so fast forward, I did gardens here and there. I dabbled. I'd, shop at the locals farmers market and things like that. But I never really considered it as a job. And then when Nathan and I got married, I really just started feeling that sense of like, whoa, we need to be responsible for what we're eating. We need to be responsible of like how we do things and the effect that has like on our environment as a whole. And so I started becoming much more conscious of these things. I started having conversations with Nathan. I started really thinking, okay, maybe I could do this as a job. And granted, I worked several jobs for years. I worked at a hospital for about 4 years. I worked in childcare for several years. When Charlie was a baby, I've done lots of different things. I've worked in accounting for an oil field company, like all the things. The last job I had was when I worked in accounting, and it was the easiest job I've ever had, right? Like, I had the best boss. He was super just like supportive of what I did on my farm, super flexible with me, with being a mother and like going to conferences still and things like that. So I had great support, but I was super dissatisfied with going to work every day. I hated working for someone else. I hated waking up and not farming every single day. That really just didn't sit well with me. So I sat down one day like any good gardener would do. I got my pen and paper and I was like, all right, I'm gonna write it out, right? I'm gonna see the pros and cons. Why do I wanna do this? What does it look like to do this? So I sat down with my pen and paper. I vividly remember this, sitting at the dinner table, and I asked myself, Jill, why do you want to do this? What is the driving factor for you wanting to quit your job and farm full time? And for me, a lot of it was food sustainability. I want to know that I don't have to worry. Gosh, I feel like every few months I'm hopping on here having a conversation with you guys in talks of another food shortage. This is mind-boggling to me. Absolutely mind-boggling. I think more of us should have control of where our food comes from, and that doesn't mean growing it yourself. That's not what I'm saying. If you're watching this video and you've never had a garden, that's okay. But you still need to know where your food comes from. You need to have a connection to your local farmer. You need to know where your food's being sourced from, how it's being grown. If you're buying meat, how are they raising those animals? Is that something you can feel good about? And so for me, Nathan and I, we were laying in bed last night. We got all these text messages from friends saying, hey, I'm hearing talks of a food shortage. Is this really happening? What's going on? What do I do? And for me, I just sit there and I'm like, well, gosh, y'all, like, you become connected with your food. You're either growing it yourself, you know your farmer. I can guarantee you the farmer down the road and the farmer sitting right here in front of you, we're not worried about these things because I'm growing enough food to last my family for an entire year, for over a year. You see all of these tomatoes behind me? This is our first wave. We're going to have a second wave. These are things I don't have to worry about. And for me, I didn't want to be shooken. I didn't want to be shooken. I didn't want to be driven out of fear to do something because somebody else is forcing me to do it. That's not how I operate. I'm not anti-government or anything like that. But I don't like somebody trying to push me in a corner. That's just not how I operate. I want to feel good. I want to know where my food's coming from because I am the one growing it and supplying it for my family. And while all these people are freaking out, we've got Nathan raising our animal protein. You have me raising, our vegetable needs. And it's just, that's something we don't have to worry about. And so for me, that was a huge deciding factor of why I was going to just quit my job and start farming full time. Another huge aspect of that is the community behind it. Instead of these people who are, who could do a Google search or watch a news channel to figure out, okay, are there shortages? What do I do? Nathan and I had people texting us and calling us, hey, how do I grow my own food? What does this look like? Do you have food available for sale? That feels so good, right? That they're not wanting to be driven into doing something in a fearful way. They're asking for a solution. How do I do this myself so where this isn't an issue? Can you teach me? Do you have any videos? Do you have any courses? What resources do you have available? And I think that that's something too that we're seeing much more of now. These are things that I really didn't have to think about a whole lot when I decided to quit my job a few years ago. But I'm seeing a lot more of that now, and I know many people are on the fence. They're like, what do I do? I'm feeling called to do this thing. I want to be connected. I want to grow my own food. I just don't know if I can take that leap of faith and quit my job to do it. And I'm here to tell you, it's the scariest thing I've ever done. There were days when I questioned it. There were days when I cried. There were days where I was just like, what on earth did I do? But I can sit here in front of you today and say it was the best decision I ever made. I'm raising up a generation to know that their food is in their backyard, that there's a person connected to that. There's a farmer who's put in work and tended to those crops and cared for those crops and have looked over those individually. There's a story behind it, right? And it's much more meaningful to me to raise a generation like this who's aware. Now, granted, they may grow up and have nothing to do with farming, and I've come to terms with that, and I'm okay with that, but at least they know, and this will be instilled within them in such a young age that they'll take it with them for years to come. I can guarantee you they won't just eat a piece of meat unknowingly and not think about the process, or do I know the farmer? Is there a connection to this at all? Where did this fruit come from? Where did these vegetables come from? And so for me, that was really kind of the deciding factor of like, hey, somebody has to do it. Somebody has to take the leap of faith and be like, you can do this. You can grow food for your family. It can be impactful. It can even be worth quitting your job to do it. Granted, we have our online store, we have courses, we have YouTube. We do a lot of educational content to be able to replace the income of what I was making. But even if I didn't have those things, I would have still taken the leap of faith because the amount of money that I am saving growing our own food that I was sourcing out and spending from other farmers and farmers market has proved very beneficial for our family. And so I'm not saying go out there and quit your job today. Like, there needs to be prayer involved. There needs to be a lot of thought involved. But for Nathan and I, it was just something, one, I felt called to it. I felt called to grow our community and grow within our community in this way. I felt called to not be in a place of fear when it comes to food shortages, and just knowing that my family is going to do what's necessary to provide enough food for our family, that we don't have to think about those things. Now, I am thinking about them, right? I'm thinking about growing my own chickpeas, because what if I don't have access to hummus? That's something we eat a lot. But that's a conversation I probably needed to be having with Nathan and thinking about anyways. And so for us, that's really where we're kind of shifting when we hear all this, like, okay, what are some of the conveniences that we are getting from the grocery store that we could do better on growing and making ourselves? And so a big push of that, we eat a lot of beans. I eat a very plant-based diet. And so for me, I'm looking at, okay, what are some more beans I can add in? We're buying bulk right now, but what if I don't have access to that? These are things I can be doing here on the farm. And I think it's always a good reset, right? Anytime someone comes to me or they send us a message and they're like, what about food shortages? What do we do? It allows me to kind of sit back, evaluate, and ask myself, Jill, what can you do better? And that is the situation that Nathan and I are in right now. How can we do better? How can we grow more things that accommodate our family and become less dependent on the grocery store? And I really encourage you to ask yourself that too. Even if you're not growing a garden for many years, I'd go to the farmer's market, I'd buy fruits and vegetables, I'd bring them home and I would can them, because then I'm learning a skill too. So if you're not growing the food yourself, you can still be sourcing it out locally and learning all these different skills of fermenting, of canning. We're using our freeze dryer so much right now. Our chickens have an abundance of eggs right now, and so what we're doing is we're freeze drying them every few days to ensure that we have eggs throughout the winter when they quit laying. And so for us, we've figured out the tools, the preserving tools we need, that are gonna just kind of make sure that we don't have to worry about these situations this summer, this winter, next year, the next year. We're just really kind of setting ourselves up. But even though we are growing a large amount of flowers this year, we're growing produce in such an efficient way and in such a succession, that again, it's not really anything that we're gonna have to worry about. So that feels really good to me. I hope this answers some of the questions you guys had. And again, just encourages you, if you've been thinking about taking the leap, take it. You're never gonna regret being more sustainable, I can assure you of that. So as y'all can see from the aftermath here, we had a major pruning day. Our tomatoes are looking mighty fine. We just have so many of them. I really wanted to show you guys the cherry tomatoes, but I am excited to make salsa with a bunch of these. Here we go. Here's our good old cherry tomatoes. So this is the Sakura. None of them have started to turn yet, but they are all looking really, really good. Same on the other side. And I did want to show you guys, we did this trial this year with these Clancy seed potatoes. So these are potatoes, but we started them from seed. We tried to do this last year. We were not very successful, so we've tried again this year. So that is what's from here over is potatoes. And then we're going to put more food production back this way. And then our cucumbers are really just starting to get big. Look at this one. We had to take it and move it around the string some. We've got some eggplants that are coming on. We are dealing with flea beetles, which is one reason I don't like growing eggplants. We seem to always deal with that. And then here we have all of our peppers, and there are so many peppers already. Look at that. So I've got a big one over here. So these things just keep getting taller and taller. Y'all can see already. So we'll be having peppers before too long. Also, can we talk about our overwintered eucalyptus? Look at this. This is so tall. And this one especially. This is like massive eucalyptus. Alright, and the last thing I wanted to check on is the squash that we planted out. It really had a hard time. It didn't look that great to begin with, but I'm starting to see some blooms on here. Still quite a bit of deficiencies, but we have treated that, so we're just going to wait and see. We did get another round of sunflowers out the other day, but yeah, these are starting to put on some blossoms. So all of these have blossoms. which is exciting. Hey, little guy. All right, friends, thanks so much for hanging out with me as we planted some beans, checked out what was going on in the high tunnel, and then just talked to you guys about kind of why I took the leap of faith and quit my job to farm. Like I had mentioned, it has been the best decision I've ever made. Being able to just see community support what we do, having you guys join us for our journey, selling our flowers. We sold produce for several years. Just knowing the impact we were having, not only on our own family, but our community as well. Something I just feel really proud about. And so if you've been thinking about it, I do encourage you, weigh out the pros and cons, write it on a piece of paper, but ultimately don't be driven by fear to not do something or to do something. But thanks so much for hanging out with me. I'll talk to you soon.